Ryan Dossey here, and in today's video, I want to walk you through exactly why I think text messaging for real estate investors is going to die off in the next year. Let's dive right in. Now, before I even get into this, let's address the elephant in the room. I own a direct mail company, so SMS marketing going away, in theory, could mean more people looking to use direct mail. As an investor, it means that there's likely going to be less not well capitalized competition in my markets. So maybe I'll even get more deals off the stuff that I'm currently doing. My focus has really been like legal, ethical, and scalable. So we've really focused on direct mail, pay-per-click, Facebook ads, and SEO. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've never cold called or like I've never done SMS marketing. We were doing SMS marketing back in like 2018, 19, and I had issues with it. Like, we got deals, don't get me wrong, but it felt a little dirty. Like, if this isn't sketchy, why am I using like a fake name and not giving them my company name and kind of jumping through all of these like hoops so it maybe doesn't like tie back to me, right? So that's kind of been why we've gotten away from it. It just didn't feel great. And one of our focuses really is on like user experience. My wife gets random text messages about properties I own of like, hey, Ryan, can I buy 123 Main Street? And it's just kind of like, meh, don't love it. So let's talk about why I think it's going away. Now, feel free to disagree with me in the comments, go back and forth, all that good stuff. There's new requirements that have come out at like the cell phone carrier levels, like Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, all of that. There's various names for it. Ties back to the TCPA, which is like the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. Also ties back to what they're calling 10DLC, which is like 10-digit long code, basically a normal phone number, not like one of the little short ones where you get texts from a company or something. You've also maybe heard it referred to as like TCR. If you use Resimpli like we do, you've maybe had Resimpli reach out and say, hey, we need to register like your phone numbers with the carriers so your text messages go through. So what does this all mean? Consumers are tired of getting cold texts from businesses that they don't know. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not it's legal or any of that. I'm not an attorney, and if I did, you guys would just go wild in the comments below anyway. But here's the thing. You're supposed to have consent to text someone as a business. Now, I know folks who've gotten sued for it. I know folks who are actively getting sued for it. Make your own decisions. For some of them, it's just like, hey, cost of doing business. But let me explain why I think it's going away. So we got audited at Ballpoint Marketing from our phone provider, where they came through and said, hey, you can't send texts to your actual customers without these steps in place. So what were those steps? We literally had to give them like, this ad goes to this landing page where they check a box here stating, I understand I'm getting texts, the purpose, the reason, the legalese for it, as well as then show in our system, we're segmenting out people who say, yes, you can text me, and no, you can't. We even had to give them the messages that we're sending. So the carrier literally said, hey, give us your EIN. If you want any text to go through, we want to know what your legal business entity is. Doesn't bode well for people kind of flying under the radar or trying to, right? They also came through and said, we don't like the language you put on your opt-in form. Make it this specifically, right? At the end of the day, like, this is their show. They say jump. If we want to send texts, we have to say how high. Think about how different of a relationship one of my customers is versus somebody I've never talked to, who I skip traced, who I'm spamming, to see if they want to sell their house, right? Somebody that has reached out to me, spent money with me, entered all of their information into my website. If I want to even send them stuff like, hey, your order has shipped, I have to have their consent for that. So Launch Control is one of the big like SMS platforms that people are still using because a couple others have not made the cut or figured out how to pivot. So I was curious what their recommendation is, and we'll link to this in the description on YouTube. But effectively, you have to Give them your EIN, show the website where you're collecting opt-in consent, the button form for it, as well as like the messages that you're sending. I'd highly recommend like scrolling through this yourself so you can kind of see what they mean. But this is like what we're talking about. So launch control's example that they recommend you use is by submitting this form and signing up for text, you consent to receive marketing text messages from company name at the phone number provided. Consent is not a condition of purchase. Message and data rates to apply. Unsubscribe at any time by replying stop. Right? So they're going to the carrier and saying, yeah, they did this, right? The carrier is actually auditing your website to see if that's there. What's interesting is they say, hey, if you don't have a website, you can use AI real quick to set one up and throw it out. And that, you effectively need to have this set up and running. They give you kind of some tutorials on how to set it up on other sites and things of that nature. And then tell you, hey, it might take 2 to 5 weeks for the carriers to start to let you continue to send texts if/when you get audited. So that sounds like, okay, well, they're just kind of checking these couple things. And like, if I get that done, like, how launch control is currently saying, then like your text will go out. Maybe that's the case, but I have an honest question for you. If they have these requirements in place and they're getting complaints about your texts, right? People are marking it as spam on their iPhone. You don't think they might reach out and say, hey, can you show us where, Suzanne Smith at phone number X opted into your website? Great. What was her IP address? What date did she do that? What's, the MAC address of the device that she used, right? They start asking questions that you might choose to keep lying and hope you don't get caught, but you don't have a good answer for those. So why I think this step is going to happen is because we've seen this happen before with phone numbers and this method of marketing. So the gold standard for skip tracing is a service called TLO-XP. It's a product owned by TransUnion. Wild. I could literally take your name, throw it in, and it would give me your social security number, your driver's license information, the VIN number for your cars, all kinds of stuff that people don't want to know is out there for sale, right? Was the gold standard for real estate investors. It was like, you have somebody's name and address, you have their contact info. None of the BS you're seeing with skip tracing providers now of maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not kind of stuff. It was accurate. Well, what they came out and said, hey, you can't use this for marketing. So what did a lot of investors do? Oh, I'm just using it to update information on my customers. And they're like, yeah, okay, cool. That worked for a couple months. Then they came back and said, hey, you looked up Suzanne Smith at 123 Main Street. Prove to us that she was a customer of yours before you did that. Oh, you can't? Kicked off platform immediately. So my take on this, if you're using SMS marketing, is by all means, make your own decisions, milk it for as long as you can, but realize at some point you're going to need to pivot. And that's going to need to be into something like cold calling, SEO, direct mail, Facebook ads, radio, TV, right? One or more of the mainstream methods of marketing. As a business owner and an investor, I always try to not be too dependent on one single channel. I own a direct mail company, but I'm still doing pay-per-click and other stuff to have kind of diversification of lead flow. The way if we have issues with, say, a post office in our market, I'm not just dead in the water overnight. If you are an Investor Carrot user and you get hit up by one of these carriers being like, hey, you need this information, they've got this blog post that I'll link to that walks you through how to add a consent opt-in to your forms that literally walks you through step-by-step how to do it. I'll be blunt, as a marketer, I think it's ugly. I hate it. I think it's going to decrease the opt-in rates on forms. But we don't have a choice. It is kind of one of those it is what it is things. Now, if you're like me and you're not using text message marketing for outbound prospecting, but maybe you're using it to work your leads, I do want to highlight a channel that is seriously neglected by 99.999% of investors that I think it's going to make sense for you to add in, and that is email marketing. It makes a lot of sense if you've gone out, met with somebody, looked at their property, that you're following up via email as well. So we're getting compliant with the carriers in our own companies, but we're also making sure we're adding in that email component. So if somebody doesn't opt into text message consent, I want to still be able to follow up with that person. And it's looking like that's going to be phone calls and email. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Like, you think I'm right, or do you think I'm totally just full of it? This is going to live on the internet, so we'll see how well this ages. But just know, if you run your mouth below and this ends up coming to pass, I'm going to tag you in this in like 6 months. Thank you guys for taking the time to hang out with me. I like to try to keep you guys like up to date on things like regulations, changes in the industry. And I think this is going to be a big one that's going to affect a lot of like the smaller wholesalers, but B, a lot of the guys who coach too. SMS marketing has been a sexy way to sell newbies on getting into the game due to the low cost of entry. I don't know that I'm going to be upset about less competition in my own markets. Thanks for hanging out with me. Talk to you guys next time.